Hey there. Hey, I thought with all the warm-ups and things I've been doing on drawing tutorials, it would be a good idea to work up some warm-ups with some basic fundamental things that you might want to be practicing for your watercolors if you're doing landscapes and cloudscapes and things like that. So I've got a warm-up tutorial today working with trees. Again, doing some various trees, and something I have just recently seen that I thought was interesting, and I gave it a try, and I was messing with it this morning, and it worked pretty well. So it's all about the way you describe the canopy of the tree. I'm working with a small little note card type size piece of watercolor paper, so these don't take long. They're really just intended to be studies, warm-ups, just like we do with the Loomis method when we're doing our figure drawing tutorials. So starting out, warming up, just getting into the zone of working up and working in that style and whatever it is that that subject matter might require. So let's get started. We'll jump over and start doing some trees. So I'm going to mix up a nice good solid puddle of green, and it's fall, it's autumn here in the Midwest. So I'm kind of in the mood, so I'm going to kind of make some autumn colors, kind of a yellow greenish color. It's pretty thick, pretty heavy. So I'm working on some fairly cheap student grade paper. Kind of mixed up the puddle. I'm going to be working with a fan brush, a round. I got a flat, I got a liner, well, that was a mop, and this is a round. So we're going to get started working with that. And I'm going to start with the fan brush. I'm going to get it wet. I got a nice puddle of colors here. It's kind of a yellow green. It's autumn here in the Midwest, so I thought I'd get started there. And I did see something recently that's pretty interesting. Think of the canopy of the trees in a general shape, right? So in this case, let's just kind of make a kind of a half circle shape, right? So we're going to go right in there. That's the canopy of the tree, and you want to work in three distinct shapes: a big shape, a medium shape, and a small shape. So we will come in here and real quick kind of have to make some determinations as to what we're going to do. And I'm just going to drop in that color like that. There's the overall arc on up there higher. And I like the fan brush because it creates such a nice irregular edge. All right, so there's the big shape. All right, and I'm going to go for a medium shape right up here to get the height of the canopy. All right, and then we're going to do a little shape right like that, right next to it. And they're not connected. They're independent of each other, mainly because that gives us some space that where we can bring in and add in the limbs. Now you can, at this point, I'm going to grab a smaller round, even with the same color. This is very wet too, so I'm going to grab a smaller round, and if you wanted to, you could even come in and start thinking about what kind of a connection from the big shape to the medium shape right in there, what kind of limbs might be connecting, where's those kind of marks happening, how big a trunk would be in there. We'll just throw some of those kind of angular limbs into this. Right there, right there. It's the same color, they're just bleeding together now, and that's how we connect them. And then we can come down, and I typically will do this initially with the same color, and thinking about that trunk. What's that trunk going to look like? That initial trunk. I'm going to bend it right there, bend it back out, and then it gets wide at the bottom, right? There we go. So, and then maybe there's a big limb, comes off this way, up into the shape. Right there, into the shape. All right, so we really already have that tree built in a single color. Now it's going to dry differently because of all the puddling, the beads coming down into the lower portions and stuff like that. You do have to kind of wait for it to dry a little bit. Or you can come in, we could even maybe sop up some of it just grab some of it. Get that bead so it's not quite as big, because that's going to take forever to dry. So I'm just going to sop it up a little bit. Sop it up down here. There we go. And right over here. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mix up a darker green. I'm going to get some of this emerald green right there. I'm going to drop a little bit of burnt sienna into it. It's going to be a nice, rich, dark green. And I'm just going to come in and think of those different shapes as spherical, and they're treated the same way as spheres. So we're just going to come in and just drop some of the darker color. It's very wet, so it's going to flow around on the lower portions of it. All right, and it's wet, so that color is going to just go everywhere. I'm just going to dab in some irregular marks wherever there might be a lower edge somewhere. I just think it's going to work really nice right down in here. Cool, maybe even up under some of these spots right there and right up here. All right, it is fall, so maybe let's work a little orange into it as well. This is kind of fun. We'll just throw some, it's really wet. This is when you really use that wet on wet. Get that, throw that orange up in it with that green and that yellow green, and all sorts of fun things are going to happen. And you just learn to trust what's going to happen. So there's not a whole lot of fussing. I'm just dropping color in there. And just have to trust that the colors will do their things. All right. And then I'm going to get some of this darker, let's look here. That is Payne's Gray. I'm going to get some of this phthalo blue. I'm going to get some of the really dark, let's see, that is probably a sepia color. All right, so I've created a really dark. I might throw a little more green in it right there. And that'll be our absolute darkest green. I'm going to come up here on the upper portion of the trunk. It's going to be in shade, and that's where we're going to want some of that really dark color. Right up in there, maybe right back up in here as well. And we'll just throw a little dabs of it here and there, just so it's doing some stuff. There we go. Again, it's in the shade right up here. Throw a little more right there. And then we can come back to my greens. We've got kind of an orangish color. I'm just going to come down here and we'll just block in. The ground, the shadow right there. So right now this needs to dry. I may mess around with it. I might even come over and clean out my brush. There might be some spots you might want to just let the colors come out a little bit. Soften the edges a bit, possibly. All right, so that's where all that kind of fun stuff happens. But it needs to dry right now. It got some interesting things happening color-wise, but I would let this dry, and then I'm going to come in and I'll kick up the shadows and stuff right there. So let's do another one. All right, so do I have the right side? Yes. All right, so we'll maybe flatten this one out. We'll just change the shape. So we're going to go with a much broader shape, a wider half moon. Maybe it's not as tall. All right, we'll do the same thing. All right, 3 shapes. All right, we've got to kind of imagine where those things are going to happen. So maybe let's make it a little more asymmetrical. So I'll just drop in the big shape, following and conforming to the basic form, and we'll drop it out like this. Okay, and let's get a middle size shape right here. Okay, so there's a separate bough. And then maybe the little one right there. So big, medium, small. All right. And again, I'm going to come in, I'll grab my color, and I'll drag out, let's see, I'm going to say this is going to have a really funky looking trunk. All right, so we'll throw it in here. We'll do one of these. Okay, there we go. We'll get this thing where it's one of those that would be hanging off of a cliff or something. All right, so there's that. I'm going to get a slightly smaller round. We'll just pop another limb in here. Again, keep your limbs very angular. And if there's a direction change, you can pop another limb off of that point. Pop in here like that. This dried pretty quick, so there's not a lot of color mixing going on there. So it's not quite as wet as the other one. All right, and we'll throw some structure right in here, maybe some right there. I'm just painting in those little branches that'll connect everything together in those empty spots. Let's throw another one in here. There we go. Cool. So you can have a lot of fun and get very inventive with the shapes that you're painting here. So again, it's darker under the bottom portion where the bow, the canopy shape is. So we'll just throw a little darker color there. I'm going to go ahead and throw a little more. Oh, again, it's autumn here. Let's throw a little warm colors into the mix. We'll throw that in here. Just let the colors do their thing. Learn how to trust what's happening. See what it does. Grab my color, darker color again. Let's grab, we'll paint in one of the limbs here. Maybe right up to here as well, coming across. There's all sorts of fun things you can do. Get some of the darker green maybe. You can even kind of pop in maybe where it's showing through. Alright, so yeah, there's all sorts of neat stuff you can do with this technique. Now I'm getting a bloom there. That's because the water I added to the shape was wetter than what the surface of the paper is. So let me get a little more pigment in that. And we'll just kind of come in and go back into that bloom and add a little more pigment in it so it doesn't bloom out quite like that. Add the shadows on the lower portion of it. Down there. Down here. Get it onto the trunk. Right, like that. There we go. All right. And throw it over here. Throw the rock face in there. There we go. Alrighty. It's good to just kind of free form some of these things. Don't always have to rely upon photo reference. Gives you a chance to practice all sorts of different skills and things you might want to get good at. So go ahead and throw a little more of a grass right there. Cool. Light source is kind of from above. I've got some sharp edges. I got some not so sharp. I'm going to unload. I'm going to feather this right here. And there we go, another tree. So do these by the dozens, and you're going to be able to practice and really get good with trees by just simply warming up, just like we do with the Loomis, with the heads, the figure. You have a structure, you have a plan. Practice that, and it comes through your confidence, comes right through your arm, down through your hand, down through that brush, right onto the piece of paper, and they're going to look great. This one's drying, the other one's drying still. It's still pretty damp, but if I was to come in, I'll get a little more darkness. Can you see it? I'm just going to paint it right here. I can add a little more of that shadow right in there, right up underneath. There we go. All right, so practice your trees. There we go. All right, so a couple tree practices. All right, remember, big shape, medium shape, and small shape. Say that 3 times, and you're going to be working and creating nice looking trees. Think of the general shape first. We got a wide oval. We had a tall oval. You got verticals. And any shape you can imagine, just break it into 3 shapes and you're going to be golden. So, hey, I hope this little tutorial was helpful. If it was, give me a like and a subscribe. Drop me some comments, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. See you then.